I was granted a marriage to the crown prince after unintentionally saving the retired emperor. A girl from the slums suddenly transformed into the noble crown princess. On the wedding night, the crown prince stared at me coldly. I couldn't help but stare back, my eyes gleaming. After a while, I couldn't hold back and blurted out my thoughts. "Those pearls on your clothes are huge. Must be worth a lot." 1. Rumor had it that the crown prince, Song Wen-jing, was extraordinarily handsome. It wasn't just a rumor, it was true. Because right now, he was sitting right in front of me. With fair skin, eyebrows as if painted with ink, deep-set eyes, and a sharp nose. So handsome. Tonight was our wedding night, but he didn't seem very happy. From the moment he saw me, his lips had been tightly pursed, and a strong keep-away aura surrounded him. Maybe he's a bit shy? Oh, come on. No need to be so polite with me. We're family now, after all. Silly guy. I'm your new bride, married with all the formalities, an official wedding procession. After we drank the wedding toast, the maidservants were led out of the room. He sat on the bed expressionless, silent. The problem was, since he didn't move, I didn't dare move either. So, we just sat there awkwardly. The heavy hairpins on my head were giving me a headache, and the weight of my bridal gown was suffocating. To break the tension, I spoke first. "The pearls on your clothes are really big, they must be worth a lot. Everyone likes compliments, right? Surely this would work." I waited happily for his response. But instead, his deep eyes, now cold as ice, stared at me with a trace of undisguised contempt. After a long pause, he finally opened his noble lips. "I'm tired. Do as you wish." With that, he laid down, turned his back to me, and soon, the sound of steady breathing filled the room. I had to admit, the crown prince sure fell asleep quickly. I tiptoed out of bed, carefully taking off the heavy bridal robe and removing the gold hairpins from my head. Looking at the glittering hairpins in my hands, I couldn't help but smile. I was thrilled. Jackpot. He. After admiring my hairpins, the ornate vases in the room, and the priceless glass lamps on the table, I finally began to feel a little sleepy. I quietly slipped into bed in my undergarments, lying as close to the edge as possible, trying to stay far from him. Though I moved very carefully, he seemed disturbed and let out a light grunt. Then, without warning, he rolled over, his arm wrapping around my neck. Before I could react, a long leg pressed down on me as well. In an instant, I was firmly trapped in his arms, unable to move. Moved? Nope, just too scared to move. His clean, fresh scent wafted toward me. It was warm. Seeing that he hadn't moved for a while, sleep overcame me, and I drifted off. 2. Get off. A deep, pleasant voice echoed in my ear. Must be a dream. It has to be a dream. How could there be a man in my bed? Whatever, I'm too sleepy, let me just keep sleeping. I hugged the pillow in my arms tighter, rubbing my cheek against it. Why did the pillow feel a bit hard? It must have been a long time since it was aired out, and the cotton inside was all bunched up. I'll have it aired out in the sun later. Get off of me. His voice grew colder. Almost simultaneously, the pillow in my arms became warmer. Wait, me? The crown prince. I snapped my eyes open, immediately locking eyes with the crown prince's icy gaze. I looked around in panic, and the scene before me nearly made me faint. How bold. I might lose my life over this. I was lying right on top of the crown prince's chest, my arms tightly wrapped around his neck, with almost all my weight pressed on him. We were so close that I could feel his warm breath. And where my face had been, there seemed to be a small puddle of something. No wonder he looked so angry. It's over. If I anger him, my chances of getting rich will be ruined. Maybe I should apologize first. I was about to speak when a thought struck me. We're husband and wife, right? What's wrong with a little hug? How petty. I stayed in that position for a while, hugging him. Finally, I decided to flash him a wide grin. "Good morning, my husband." Ha ha ha. My hearty laugh perfectly covered my guilt. Unexpectedly, the word husband caused this usually cold crown prince to freeze, his face turning as red as a rooster's comb, even his ears flushed crimson. But I didn't even do anything. Why was he blushing? If someone came in, they might think I had done something to him. Harassing the crown prince, now that's a serious crime. I'd never be able to explain myself. Just then, the door creaked open. "Someone's here?" The retired emperor, beaming with joy, entered with a jade guanine statue in his hands. Seeing our intimate position, he chuckled. "Oops, sorry. Seems like you won't be needing this fertility guanine after all." "A fertility guanine? We need it. We definitely need it." Determined not to let a single coin slip through my fingers, I jumped up to stop the retired emperor. But in my haste, I accidentally stepped right on the crown prince's lower region. He let out a muffled groan, his brows furrowed, and his handsome features twisted in pain. What's wrong with him? I didn't have time to care. I rushed over to the retired emperor. I successfully got the guanine statue before he left. Holding the jade statue up, I gave the crown prince a triumphant grin. But he didn't seem pleased. His facial muscles twitched in anger, and the sharp look in his eyes nearly pierced through me. After a long moment, he coldly spat out a few words through gritted teeth. "Summon the royal physician." 3. The royal physician was inside, treating the crown prince. I waited anxiously outside the room. Mainly because I was afraid the emperor and empress might blame me for not taking good care of him. After all, I had sworn in front of the officials yesterday that I would cherish and protect the crown prince, loving him for the rest of my life. But on the very first day of our marriage, I had to call for the royal physician. How embarrassing. Soon, the physician came out. He said the crown prince wasn't seriously hurt, just needed 2 doses of blood-circulating medicine and some ice to reduce swelling. I didn't quite understand. Where exactly was he injured? But the elderly maid next to me kept reminding me to stay dignified and speak less. So, I swallowed my questions. I guess I'll just ask him later when I help apply the ice. Before leaving, the physician kindly reminded me that the crown prince was of noble status, unlike ordinary people, so we should be moderate and not overdo it. His words left me even more confused. The people in this palace. They always speak so vaguely. It's headache-inducing. We were supposed to visit the emperor and empress today, but since the crown prince was injured, we couldn't go. I sent someone to inform the palace. Unexpectedly, the emperor and empress had already heard from the physician about the crown prince's injury. I was trembling with fear, waiting for punishment. But instead of punishment, a servant arrived with a large amount of gifts. As I accepted the rewards, the eunuch said that the emperor praised the crown prince for being very much like himself in his younger days. The empress told us to take care of our health. Even the retired emperor came by, joking that he was looking forward to holding a great-grandson. While the eunuch spoke, I kept my eyes on the crown prince. But the more the eunuch said, the darker the crown prince's expression became. By the end, he nearly buried his head under the covers. Was he embarrassed again? Why was he always getting shy? He's even a year older than me. How could his skin be thinner than mine? So, the crown prince lay in bed for 2 days. During that time, I tried to go in and apply the ice for him, but each time, he glared me out of the room. Eventually, I gave up and enjoyed my free time. While wandering around the Eastern Palace, I discovered a dog hole in the backyard. With my small frame, I could just barely squeeze through it. What a stroke of luck! Now I could sneak out whenever I wanted. I quickly dismissed the maid, covered the hole with vines, and made my way back. On the way, I bumped into the steward carrying a food box. He explained that the crown prince had requested some pastries from Linglong Pavilion to counter the bitterness of his medicine. The crown prince likes pastries? Who would have thought? The pastries at Linglong Pavilion are as expensive as silk, just one small plate costs 20 taels of silver. It's really not worth it. Suddenly, a bold idea popped into my head. Ha ha ha. Here comes another money-making opportunity. 4. When I decide on something, I act immediately. I told the steward that I would personally handle today's snacks for the Crown Prince. The steward looked at me, half doubtful. I squeezed out a few tears and said, "The Crown Prince has been ill these past few days. I haven't been able to eat or sleep well. I just want to do something for him." Seeing my deep affection for the Crown Prince and not wanting to offend me, the steward agreed. I took my personal maid, Xiao-Qi, and rushed into the kitchen with great enthusiasm. Under the astonished gazes of the staff, I quickly prepared 2 types of pastries: milk cakes and mung bean cakes. The steward had mentioned that the Crown Prince was a picky eater and only enjoyed these 2 kinds. After packing the pastries into an exquisite food box, I went to find the Crown Prince. He was in the study, writing. His hand moved smoothly and steadily as he held the brush. His broad shoulders were straight, his posture firm and unwavering. It seemed he had almost fully recovered. "Time for some snacks." I waved the food box at him, grinning ingratiatingly. He glanced at me lightly and signaled for the nearby guard to take the box. After testing it with a silver needle for poison, he picked up a piece of milk cake and placed it in his mouth. I eagerly poured him a cup of tea and said, "Take your time, don't choke." He chewed for a moment, then furrowed his brows. "The taste. He doesn't like it? The taste seems familiar." Finally, my heart settled down. "Brother, can't you just say things in one go? You almost scared me to death." I was afraid he had some peculiar taste and wouldn't like my pastries. "How is it?" I looked at him expectantly. "It's all right. Not too sweet or greasy," he said as he tossed a piece of mung bean cake into his mouth. Well, well. The Crown Prince sure knows good food. These were all made by me." "I'm glad you like them," I said, beaming. He glanced at me, his brows subtly shifting, as if the sweet pastries had melted some of his coldness. Seeing that he was quite satisfied, I seized the moment. 20 taels of silver, please." His hand, holding the pastry, froze for a moment, and without hesitation, he threw the mung bean cake back onto the plate. "Too expensive?" "A plate of pastries from Linglong Pavilion costs 20 taels for just 8 pieces, and I gave him a whole plate of 12. But, since the ingredients were bought with his money, I'll only charge him for my labor." Gritting my teeth, I said, 10 taels will do." 5. "Just 10 taels?" The Crown Prince leaned closer to me, his deep voice brushing past my ear, the warm sensation making my face flush. I quietly moved my stool further from him and firmly said, "Yes, 10 taels." "What a shame," he said, his eyes flashing with a hint of regret. "There's a new batch of jewelry from the western regions. My father sent some to the Eastern Palace, and I was thinking of letting you pick a piece or 2. "Jewelry. The Emperor's gifts are always precious treasures. Even the cheapest one would be worth far more than 10 taels of silver. This is a huge loss. But once spoken, a word can't be taken back." I forced a pained smile, one more sorrowful than crying. "Since we agreed on 10 taels, 10 taels it is." The Crown Prince waved his hand. "Give her 10 taels." Holding the silver ingot, I felt reluctant. "How about this? I'll make you a snack every day." He looked puzzled. "Or something else, like buns, peanut paste, rice wine balls, or soy sauce pancakes." As I listed options, the guard escorted me out while the Crown Prince practiced his calligraphy. "Your Highness, the prince is about to practice his writing," the guard said. The door slammed shut behind me. Xiao-Qi returned from the kitchen, having eaten the remaining pastries after serving the Crown Prince's portion. She said she ate 8 pieces of milk cake and 6 mung bean cakes. "The girl's stomach is small, and pastries are filling, so she was almost leaning against the wall from being too full. She burped, "Burp princess, they were really delicious. Even better than the ones from Linglong Pavilion." "Of course," I said smugly. "I'm not boasting, but back when I sold pastries, many servants from rich families came specifically to buy from me." "This is true. I used to sell pastries at the market. But after I found a better paying job, my pastry making days ended." Her compliment put me in a great mood. And I took her for a walk around the garden to help digest. After 2 rounds, a portly man with 2 attractive women entered. The Crown Prince's personal guard immediately blocked them in the garden, then hurried towards the study as if something urgent had come up. Their tense expressions stirred my curiosity. I grabbed Xiaoqi and quietly followed, pressing ourselves against the window to eavesdrop. Through the thin paper window, I saw the pockmarked guard speak first. "Your Highness, Lordly has come again, bringing 2 beauties as gifts for you." "The fool probably heard about your injury and thinks you're some lecher," the dark-skinned guard said angrily. "Silence." The pockmarked guard cut him off, madly signaling him not to mention the Crown Prince's sore spot. Then he carefully added, "Lordly may be foolish, but he was unwavering in supporting you during the succession battle. Now, he's just trying to please you. He may be stupid, but he's loyal. It wouldn't be right to offend him." The dark-skinned guard, suddenly enlightened, asked cautiously, "Then, should we keep the women here? If you don't fancy them, they can just serve as maids." "The Eastern Palace doesn't need extra eyes, ears, or mouths," the Crown Prince said coldly, his back to me. Though I couldn't see his face, his icy tone revealed his anger. "Burp." Xiaoqi couldn't control herself and let out a loud burp. Before I could cover her mouth, the sound shattered the stillness, startling the birds from the trees. A figure leaped out from the window, and a sword was pointed straight at my throat. 6. The next moment, we were forced to kneel before the Crown Prince. So, apart from loving money, the Crown Princess also has a hobby of eavesdropping. The Crown Prince's cold, deep voice drifted toward me. "Your Highness, let me explain, plead my case." I looked at him, my eyes brimming with tears. His lips pressed into a thin line. His dark eyes as sharp and solitary as an eagle in the night, proud and domineering. The aura was terrifying. "I have a way to solve this problem for you," I said, trembling. He stared at me, his expression dark and wary, his gaze as cold as a blade. "Speak. If it works, just give me 20 taels of silver." I cautiously raised 2 fingers. His dark eyes narrowed, a hint of amusement appearing, but he remained silent. During the long wait for his response, my heart pounded as if there were 15 buckets drawing water inside me. Seeing that he wasn't budging, I gritted my teeth and added, "Your Highness, you're young and vigorous, and gifts of women are likely to keep coming. Why not let me handle such matters? We can negotiate a price, 10 taels per time will do." He leaned back slightly, resting calmly against the chair. His voice was cold and detached. "Then I'll trouble the Crown Princess with this task." He agreed. I was overjoyed, my heart filling with excitement. I smiled, saying, "I won't let you down, Your Highness." The solution was simple. The Crown Prince didn't even need to get involved. All I had to do was make it known that the Crown Prince and I were newlyweds, deeply in love. If a third person were to come between us, I would definitely cry, make a scene, and threaten to hang myself, causing endless turmoil in the Eastern Palace. I looked at Lordly sincerely. "You wouldn't want the Crown Prince to constantly worry about family issues, would you?" Lordly scratched his head, troubled. My intention was to ease the Crown Prince's burdens. I didn't expect my good intentions to backfire. The Crown Prince watched me from afar. I was a bit nervous. He couldn't hear us from this distance, could he? After a brief negotiation, Lordly, feeling guilty, led the 2 beauties away. Mission accomplished. I happily went to the Crown Prince to claim my reward. To my surprise, he had overheard our conversation with his sharp hearing. He looked displeased. You dared to portray me as a man afraid of his wife. Panicked, I dropped to my knees. Your Highness, not afraid, respect. Respect. I emphasized respect twice, making it clear. Then, I flattered him. Your Highness, you're a noble man who commands the world yet still considers your wife's feelings. It's truly admirable. Just as the Crown Prince was about to speak, the steward's urgent voice interrupted, Your Highness, Your Highness. The retired emperor has summoned both of you to the palace immediately. Chapter 7. The steward seemed anxious, making me think something serious had happened. I followed the Crown Prince into the palace in a rush. When we arrived, we stood dumbfounded, staring at each other. It turned out that the emperor had prepared a banquet for us. He said he wanted to introduce me to the royal relatives, and that I should dress formally. The emperor had even prepared new clothes for me. So, the Crown Prince stayed behind to talk with the emperor, while I went to a side hall to change. It was my first time entering the palace, so I tried my best to smile, be polite, and tread carefully. But that didn't stop trouble from finding me. After changing, I followed a palace maid back, walking obediently. Suddenly, a delicate-looking young lady blocked my path with a haughty attitude. So, you're the poor girl who dared to climb up to the Crown Prince. You only managed that because of your seductive looks. She didn't come with good intentions. In the past, I might have endured her insults. After all, as an orphan, I'd grown up with people looking down on me. But now, I'm the Crown Princess, representing the East Palace. Her insults weren't just toward me, but also toward the Crown Prince's residence. Unforgivable. As she continued her tirade, her words becoming more vulgar, I grew increasingly irritated. Without thinking, I slapped her across the face. Swoosh. Finally, silence. I hit her hard. My palm tingled and trembled slightly from the impact. The girl fell to the ground, clutching her reddened cheek, sobbing, You lowly wench. How dare you strike me? My aunt is the emperor's favored consort Lan, and my father is the general of the chariots. So what? A cold voice interrupted. It was the Crown Prince. He naturally took my hand in his. His hand was cold, sending a shiver through me, cooling my burning palm. Seeing the Crown Prince, the girl cried even more pitifully, Ah Jing, we've known each other since childhood. My instincts told me there was some gossip here, and I was itching to grab a seat and some snacks, to listen in. But, alas, there was no time for that. Just 2 sentences in, the Crown Prince dragged me away. Chapter 8. At the banquet, the emperor beamed as he recounted how I had bravely saved him a month ago. His words were sincere, and as he got emotional, he even shed 2 tears. It was she who saved my life. With his speech, he successfully painted me as a courageous and selfless heroine. I forced a couple of awkward laughs, guilt stirring within me. To be honest, the truth was. Let's go back to a month ago. That day, I saw the plump and round winter jujubes in the yard and thought they were so cute. They would surely fetch a good price. I picked a basket full and went to the market to sell them. An old man asked if they were sweet. Not one to be stingy, I gave him one to try. He tasted it carefully and then asked for 2 pounds. After weighing it out, I handed it to him, but his expression suddenly changed, and he ran off. Trying to skip payment? No way. Without considering his age, I lunged after him, grabbing him around the waist, hooking my leg to flip him backward, and pressing my knee into his back to hold him down. I yelled, Pay up. Before I could finish, a sticky jujube pit shot out of his mouth, flying far away. I quickly let go of him. After a few coughs, his face, which had turned red, returned to normal. Turns out, he had been choking on the jujube pit. He must have been running toward the clinic. I almost hurt him. Ashamed, I hung my head low. Thank you for saving my life, young lady. I will surely repay you. With that, the old man handed me a silver ingot and walked away with his jujubes. As I hefted the hefty silver ingot, my eyes sparkled with joy. I thought, what a great reward. I had accidentally earned a silver ingot. I was happy for days. Half a month later, I had nearly forgotten about the incident when a group of people suddenly stormed into my shabby hut, bringing with them an imperial edict for marriage. It was only then that I learned the old man was the emperor. And that's how I, a poor girl from the slums, became the crown princess. It's a hard story to explain. Mostly because I'm afraid if I don't explain it properly, I might lose my head. After all, it's said that serving an emperor is like serving a tiger, and though this one was retired, he was still dangerous. I consoled myself by thinking, the truth no longer matters, as long as the emperor is happy, that's all that counts. Everyone praised me enthusiastically. The crown princess, would you like to say something? The crown prince's warm breath lingered near my ear, his presence and scent gently enveloping me. Chapter 9. Honestly, I didn't feel like saying anything. Twisting the fabric of my gown in my hands, I looked up at the emperor, who was smiling warmly from his seat, and solemnly said, "This shouldn't be credited to me. It's because of your majesty's great fortune, your destiny as a blessed one, that you escaped such peril." And with that, I began showering him with compliments. To show my sincerity, I changed up the flattery with every sentence, making sure not to repeat myself. Every word and phrase was carefully crafted. Almost as if my brain was about to burst from the effort. Whether or not my words were heartfelt didn't matter, the skill alone should have spared me any trouble. Sure enough, the crown prince's lips curled into a barely noticeable smile, and his voice softened, quite the smooth talker. I finally let out a sigh of relief. On the way back, we passed through a bustling marketplace. The Mid-Autumn Festival was next month, and lanterns were already being set up, with street vendors lining the roads. Thinking about how I would likely spend all future mid-autumns in the palace, I suddenly felt a pang of sadness. Since we were out, I thought. And I ended up dragging the crown prince out of the carriage. Perhaps he was bored with life in the palace, as he willingly came along and even told the secret guards not to follow too closely. So I led him through the crowded streets, eating and shopping. Since he hadn't brought any money, I had no choice but to painfully spend my hard-earned silver. Watching my silver ingot turn into small change, then into copper coins, and finally disappear altogether, I felt my heart bleed, tears welling up in my eyes. The crown prince looked at me disdainfully. "I'll pay you back when we get back. Look how stingy you are." Upon hearing that he would repay me, I immediately perked up, pulling out another silver ingot. "I'd like some candied chestnuts." These were a rare treat I could hardly afford on normal days, but since the crown prince was treating, I wasn't going to hold back. "Buy whatever you want," he said curtly. At that moment, the crown prince was truly my hero. Without hesitation, I bought even more things. Since we had already had dinner, we just sampled each item. But there was no way I was going to waste all the food we bought. On our way back to the palace, I had the coachman take a detour to my old neighborhood, where I distributed the food to the neighbors and left all the money I had on me with them. This was the poorest area in the capital, where people lived in thatched huts, with barely 2 decent tile-roofed houses in sight. The residents were either those who had lost everything or refugees from other regions. An elderly woman cried tears of joy, her nose running as she sobbed, "Crown Princess, you still remember us. Auntie, it's only been a month. How could I forget you all?" I wanted to stay longer and chat with them, but I remembered the crown prince was waiting in the carriage, so I quickly said my goodbyes. As I turned to leave, I saw the crown prince's personal guard stepping out of the carriage, carrying a food box. The food box was filled with various delicacies the emperor had specially prepared for his dear grandson. "What's this?" I asked, puzzled. "The crown prince instructed me to give it to your neighbors." Back in the carriage, I felt a warmth in my chest and didn't know what to say for a moment. After a while, I blurted out, "The crown prince is really a good man. We've already eaten, and taking the food back would be a waste, so it's better to give it to those who need it," he said casually. But his words stirred something deep within me, a warmth spreading through my body. I had been shallow earlier. In that moment, the Crown Prince was truly my hero. Chapter 10. Early in the morning, I disguised myself. Wearing a gray and white scholar's robe, with my long hair neatly tied up, I looked just like a little attendant. Today, I was to accompany the Crown Prince to study at the Imperial Academy. The retired emperor knew that I hadn't had much schooling and barely recognized a few characters. Yesterday, he specifically ordered that I go along. However, only boys were allowed at the Imperial Academy. So, I had to dress as a boy, pretending to be the prince's attendant. Before we left, the Crown Prince gazed at my outfit. And I fell into a moment of deep thought. Could it be that there was something on my face? I carefully checked myself in the mirror, but found nothing unusual. After a while, he suddenly grabbed my wrist, as if having a revelation, and coldly spat out a few words through clenched teeth. "Give me back my jade pendant." Jade pendant. In an instant, long-buried memories surged back. It must have been 4 or 5 years ago. I was on the street, disguised as a young Taoist, setting up a fortune-telling stall. My first attempt at business didn't go well. The first customer I encountered was the Crown Prince. At that time, I didn't know he was the Crown Prince. Seeing his delicate skin and fine clothes, I thought I could fleece him a little. So, I rushed up to him, spinning some nonsense. I told him his luck had been bad recently, and that he was in for a disaster involving bloodshed, but for a fee, I could help him ward it off. He was young and gullible back then, so he believed my lies. But he said he had lost his entourage and had no money on him. I spotted the mutton-fat jade pendant hanging from his waist and suggested he use it as collateral until he returned with silver. He was so easy to fool back then. Without hesitation, he took off the pendant and gave it to me, repeatedly promising to return for it. At first, I intended to wait for him, but then a gang of thugs showed up in the street. I was just a young girl, how could I possibly stand up to them? So, I quietly packed up and left. Later, I was inexplicably chased twice, so I didn't dare set up shop as a little Taoist anymore. That's why I never returned the jade pendant. Thinking about all this, I lowered my head guiltily. Why is the ground so smooth? Not even a hole to crawl into. Ah. I brought this on myself. After gathering my thoughts, I forced a smile at the Crown Prince, my eyes involuntarily misting up with emotion. It's been a long time. Chapter 11. I sat in the carriage, feeling utterly frustrated, with the Crown Prince seated next to me. He sat with his arms crossed, saying nothing, like an ice sculpture, radiating coldness. It seemed he was truly angry. Just like that, my first chance to attend school was snuffed out, all because of my youthful foolishness. He was now coming with me to retrieve the jade pendant. I love money, but I also understand the principle of earning it rightfully. I hadn't sold the pendant, I had it stashed away at home. When he saw my shabby little hut, I keenly noticed a fleeting look of surprise in his eyes. I smiled nonchalantly, pretending to be light-hearted. It's habitable, just a bit cold in the winter and hot in the summer. He didn't smile, but his brows moved slightly, and there was a hint of pity in his eyes. I'm doing fine, really. I was raised on the kindness of my neighbors. They gave me food, clothes, and taught me how to survive. The light in his eyes dimmed bit by bit. Sensing that I'd said too much, I promptly shut my mouth. After a long while, he spoke in a hoarse voice, "The pendant." At that moment, I noticed something glistening in his eyes. I was stunned, and only when I met his cold gaze did I nervously start moving the bed. I vaguely remembered burying the pendant beneath it. The Crown Prince moved to help. That was out of the question. I hurriedly waved my hands. "Your Highness, you are of noble status. Please rest, I'll do it myself." "Shut up." He shot me a glare and continued moving the bed. He looked slender, but surprisingly, he had great strength. He lifted the bed effortlessly. I grabbed a hoe and started digging frantically at the ground. At last, I found my stash. It wasn't much of a money jar, just a small, ordinary clay pot. It had been so long that when I opened it, a faint puff of smoke escaped. One by one, I pulled out the contents. A few copper coins, a red ribbon, a melted piece of candy. Finally, at the bottom, I found a small piece of gold and the jade pendant. I handed the pendant to the crown prince, while I clutched the piece of gold, beaming. I can't believe I still have this much money. You wait in the carriage. Ignoring the crown prince, beside me, I dashed next door. The uncle was still lying sick in bed, and the auntie was weaving baskets while the kids ran around outside. They should have been in school by now. A wave of sorrow surged in my heart. I shoved the piece of gold into the auntie's hands. Take uncle to the doctor and get the kids enrolled in school. They shouldn't waste time running around all day. After much persuasion, the auntie finally accepted the small piece of gold, repeatedly thanking me. I remembered their kindness, and now that I had enough to eat and drink, it was time to repay them. When I stepped outside, the crown prince was still waiting for me. Surprised, I ran over to him. His expression was a bit awkward. It didn't seem very safe here. With that, he strode ahead without looking at me. I quickly scurried after him. Can I still go to the Imperial Academy to study? He glanced at me, then arrogantly tossed out 3 words, depends on my mood. There's hope. I couldn't let this rare opportunity slip away. Seizing the moment, I pleaded, Your Highness, you're so magnanimous. Please don't hold a grudge against me. Besides, you're the only one I ever fooled. I've changed now. Only one. You sound regretful. He had a knack for catching the key points. I shook my head frantically, I wouldn't dare. How about I make you some milk cake? I said, full of flattery. 10 taels per portion. Not interested. His tone was firm. Today, it's free. You can eat whatever you want. Milk cake, mung bean cake, meat buns? Not hungry. I can cook too, sweet and sour fish, braised pork. Chapter 12. I worked all night and prepared a whole table of dishes. After eating, the crown prince finally cooled down and agreed to let me go to the academy with him. In the middle of the night, I dragged Xiaoqi to the kitchen. I stuffed a few pieces of milk cake into her hands, and she perked up immediately. After hearing my plan, Xiaoqi was baffled. Your ladyship, you plan to sell snacks at the academy? Will they even let you stay? I quickly covered her mouth, be quiet. I've already figured it out. The noble sons wake up late and don't have time for breakfast before school. I'm sure selling them snacks will work. How can anyone study well on an empty stomach? After a flurry of activity, I made 32 pieces of milk cake and 32 pieces of mung bean cake. 60 pieces fit neatly into a food box. Finish the snacks. His expression softened a bit. Turns out, he was just hungry. When people are hungry, they get angrier more easily. The first day at the academy ended on a good note. Some of my classmates even asked me to bring more snacks tomorrow, saying they hadn't had enough today. Today was just a test run, tomorrow, I'll definitely make more. I was one step closer to my dream of getting rich. 13. Today I made quite a bit of money, and I was happy. After a long day, I fell asleep as soon as I hit the bed. In the middle of the night, Xiaoqi quietly came to wake me up to go to the kitchen. But just my luck, the crown prince rolled over and trapped me tightly with his hands and feet. I tried to push his hands away. To my surprise, he was still so strong even in his sleep. After a while, he remained completely unmoved. But I didn't dare make too much noise, afraid of waking him. After some time, I heard his steady breathing. At the same time, it seemed he had loosened his grip a bit. I tried again to push his hands away. His strength seemed to have increased again. Helpless, I ultimately had to give up. So, I lay there staring at the ceiling until dawn. As soon as the rooster crowed, the crown prince immediately let go of me and got up, stretching lazily, I slept so well last night. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and my eyes were dark circles. I was sore all over from being crushed by him. In total, I only slept for 2 hours. But being a guest in someone else's home, I could only swallow my tears. Afterwards, we had breakfast and headed to the Imperial Academy. The carriage rocked back and forth, and I leaned against the wall, feeling drowsy. With my eyes closed, I actually fell asleep. The carriage came to a steady stop at the entrance of the academy. I woke up just in time to stretch lazily. Thud. With a muffled sound. The Crown Prince let out a low grunt. I was startled awake and looked over at him. He was covering one eye, and the cold light in the other seemed to freeze me. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." I was so nervous that I didn't know what to do, and all I could say was apologies. Oh no, oh no. I accidentally hurt the Crown Prince. He wouldn't just kill me, would he? After a chilling silence, the Crown Prince sighed deeply. "Forget it, I'm used to it." "So generous?" I was a bit taken aback. As we got off the carriage, a man with a thumb-sized black mole on his brow approached. This person looked strikingly familiar. As if he noticed me staring at him, he shot me a fierce glare. That glare. It felt like a cold snake was crawling up my spine, sending chills through my body. I steadied myself and quietly tugged at the Crown Prince's sleeve, leaning in to whisper, "Which family does that man with the big black mole belong to?" The Crown Prince casually glanced at him. "I don't know, probably a servant of the Lee family's young master." "Is he the Lord Lee who sent beauties last time?" "Uh-huh." With that affirmative answer, my heart began to race. If I wasn't mistaken, he was 14. The Crown Prince has been acting strangely these past few days. He keeps making me do this and that, leaving me too busy to make snacks to sell. I don't even know where I offended him. This dog of a prince is hard to please. But I still have to keep him happy. What a miserable fate. Today, I finally had a day off, so I made osmanthus cakes with half a gin of white wine to bring to him. Just as I reached the door, I heard a woman's giggling and some panting noises coming from inside. How lively! This dog of a prince actually dares to fool around behind my back. Furious, I kicked the door open. Inside, it was indeed a scene of springtime delight. 2 scantily clad courtesans were dancing around the Crown Prince, occasionally teasing him with their hands. Their pale, slender fingers gently brushed against his face, down his throat, and further down. TSK, TSK, TSK. With such figures and looks, even as a girl, I couldn't resist the temptation and almost fell to their feet. The Crown Prince's self-control was much better than mine. His clothes were almost completely stripped off, leaving only his inner garment, yet he still sipped his tea, his expression completely unruffled. Thinking about it, I didn't have the right to say anything. I smiled and generously said, "I just came to bring some snacks. Enjoy yourselves, everyone. Continue, continue." With that, I wisely retreated and waited outside. After 2 knocks, I pushed the door open. The 2 courtesans were lying on the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. The Crown Prince was leaning back in a rocking chair, and the curtain was drawn open. What a significant sacrifice this was. The Crown Prince glanced at me, adjusted his clothing in front of his chest, as if afraid I might peek. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. His personal guard rushed in, looking at the 2 courtesans on the ground, with a troubled expression. "Your Highness, how should we deal with this?" "Send them back to Lord Lee as a warning." "Understood." The 2 men took their orders and left. The Crown Prince leisurely put on his outer robe, his amused. "What's wrong? Aren't you going to watch?" I could barely keep my eyes from rolling to the ceiling. "Song wenching. Are you even human? I was nearly killed by that man with the big black mole, because I had your jade pendant, and you still have the nerve to talk casually." I couldn't hold back any longer and launched into a tirade at him. Then I turned and feigned nonchalance as I left. but deep down, I was panicking. 15. After that day, I didn't see the Crown Prince for a whole 2 weeks. He was too busy with official business and didn't let me follow him to the Imperial Academy. I couldn't even find a chance to see him. It seems he was really angry this time. I was just a moment of impulse. Sigh. Looking back, I regretted saying those things. 5 years ago, it was the most intense time of the struggle for the heir. Born in a royal family, the Crown Prince had no way out if he didn't fight for his position. But there were traitors around him, and he was hunted down everywhere. Fortunately, he had the fortune to survive and successfully became the Crown Prince. Thinking about it, he's quite a pitiful person. If I hadn't seen that man with the big black mole, the one who tried to kill me twice back then, he still wouldn't know that the traitor around him was the usually loyal Lordly. Life in the East Palace was so boring. I rested my chin on my hands and leaned against the window, waiting for dusk. Your Highness has asked you to go home for a while. It was Xiao Qi. He wants me to go home? Is he planning to dismiss me? This song wenching is too ruthless. He orders me around every day, and I only said something to him once. This dog of a man is so petty. I felt a pain in my chest from anger. I don't care about this dog of a man. There's someone better out there, someone more obedient. I took out my package to pack my things. I wasn't in a hurry for anything else, just to put the glass lamp on the table into my bag. Selling this thing would keep me well fed for a while. I picked the expensive items to take with me. Xiao Qi was confused. What are you doing? There was no time to explain. I quickly packed up my jewelry and various valuable trinkets. I shouted at her, let's go. 16. So, I sat in the carriage sent back home by the East Palace. On the way, I took out a pearl hairpin and gave it to Xiao Qi. After all, we've been together for a while. Even if it was short, I still want to leave you a gift. Before getting off the carriage, I added, come visit me when you have time. It wasn't just polite talk, every word came from the heart. Your Highness, what are you saying? Xiao Qi was on the verge of tears. I hugged her and said, we part ways here. After saying that, I decisively turned to leave. Xiao Qi, unwilling to let me go, chased after me, Your Highness, do you not want me anymore? After leaving the East Palace, I couldn't afford to keep a little maid. Xiao Qi, our fate has come to an end. I shifted my tone, sowing discord, you have to blame the Crown Prince for this. Blame me for what? Your Highness. I turned my head to look at him, speechless, ultimately managing to force out a smile that was more awkward than a cry. Let's part on good terms. After all, I had offended him. If he took everything back, how would I live without money? Come with me. He took my hand and walked toward my home. This didn't seem to be the direction of my home. The ground was paved with smooth gravel, not dirt road. Most of the houses inside were tiled roofs, not thatched cottages. Is this my home? Uncle, Aunt. They were all there. What was going on? Aunt wore a joyful expression. Your Highness is truly a good person. He transformed our place to be just like the capital, built us houses, repaired the roads, and even set up a private school and a clinic. So he brought me here to show me the changes. The happiness came too suddenly. I felt my nose tingle, and tears streamed down uncontrollably. Through my blurry tears, I saw the Crown Prince's usual calm demeanor change, looking a bit flustered. Lin Chuyo, why are you crying? Because I'm touched. I sniffed. What did you bring in your bundle? Is there food? Taking advantage of my moment of distraction, the Crown Prince snatched my bundle away. He pulled out one item at a time, a colored glazed lamp, hairpin, necklace. Incense burner. What if I said I was afraid these things would get lost in the East Palace, so I carried them with me? Would you believe me? He looked at me with disbelief. Lin Chuyo, are you trying to cut ties with me? His tone suggested he was definitely angry. Very angry. No, Your Highness, listen to my excuse. The end. Epilogue, Song Wenjing's perspective. A year ago, my grandfather said he found me a wife. I was internally opposed. But my grandfather insisted this girl was special. With her by my side, he would feel at ease. Moreover, several high-ranking officials in court had daughters of marriageable age they wanted to send to the East Palace. Choosing anyone would be inappropriate, so it would be better to select a common girl to leave them speechless. Unable to resist my grandfather's persistent persuasion, I eventually agreed to the marriage. A month later, the wedding took place as scheduled. I finally met the girl my grandfather considered special. Lin Chuyo was very beautiful. However, her personality was unlike any girl I had known. Other girls were like delicate flowers, needing careful nurturing. But she was like a blade of grass, a resilient little grass. Our first meeting was not pleasant. On the wedding night, she wasn't shy like most girls and didn't come forward to help me undress. Instead, she just stared at me with her round, grape-like black eyes, grinning foolishly. I began to suspect my grandfather had made a mistake due to his old age. The girl before me not only behaved rudely, but also showed some greed. She pointed at the luminous pearl on my robe, her eyes sparkling. "This pearl is so big, it must be worth a lot." In any case, I didn't see any benefits from her. Especially when she laughed while offering me ice to help with my ice compress. I could hardly wait to throw her out of the East Palace. But later, I found she had a bit of usefulness. The pastry she made tasted similar to what the Empress Dowager made. That was a flavor I hadn't tasted in years. Yet after eating just a couple, she actually asked me for money. This woman was simply unreasonable. Seeing her full of hope, I suddenly had the idea to tease her. The method was indeed effective. She was left speechless, yet she still accepted the silver ingots with pain. Her expression was too amusing. Later, she devised other ways to earn money. I was puzzled. The East Palace provided her with food and drink, so why did she need money? Eventually, I learned she wanted the money to help the neighbors who had once helped her. One time, I overheard a maid asking her why she didn't just draw silver from the East Palace's treasury. She said it wasn't appropriate. If everyone could freely take money from the national treasury for personal affairs, what would happen then? She spoke with such seriousness that I couldn't help but look at her differently. What surprised me even more was that she turned out to be the little Taoist priestess who had tricked me out of my jade pendant 5 years ago. That was the pendant the Empress Dowager had left for me. I had searched for her for a long time. But since she was disguised as a man, she managed to deceive me. It seemed she not only behaved rudely, but also employed deceptive tactics. This person was hopeless. I didn't expect she still kept my jade pendant and had been chased twice for being mistaken as me. That was somewhat commendable. Moreover, she didn't seem that greedy, as she sent her hard-earned gold to help the neighbors see a doctor and send their children to school. After giving the gold, the happiness on her face surpassed even receiving gold herself. I understood why my grandfather insisted on having me marry her. She came from humble beginnings, but had a heart full of gratitude. Though not highly educated, she understood the importance of education. Diligent and capable, she remained focused on using her own hands to earn money to help the poor, despite already being the crown princess. And her mind was quite sharp too. When she saw the guard from Li Sun's household and realized he was the one who had chased her, she immediately reminded me to be careful of Li Sun. After investigating, I discovered that Li Sun was merely pretending to be loyal to me while actually being loyal to my elder brother. For a time I was hunted by mysterious forces, which I later found out was due to him. After dealing with Li Sun, I also investigated the officials in charge of her neighborhood. Sure enough, they were corrupt little men. They had placed the common people in such dire straits. If I hadn't followed Lin Chuyo back for a visit, I would never have thought such impoverished places existed in the bustling capital. So I ordered a complete overhaul of the area. I repaired roads, built houses, established private schools, clinics. I even personally oversaw the work to caution the officials in court to act prudently and not let me catch them making mistakes. I was busy with this for half a month, leaving no time to see Lin Chuyo. She actually wanted to cut ties with me. I regretted making her home so comfortable. This allowed her to return whenever she wanted. In a fit of anger, I ignored her for several days. She knew she was in the wrong and made several delicious meals to placate me. That was more like it. Seeing my expression soften a bit, she immediately reached out for money. This greedy little appearance was truly. Later, she even established a pricing standard. 10 taels of silver for a meal. 1 tael of silver for a massage. I had her write it all down to settle accounts at the end of the year. She was thrilled, saying she would use the money to help those poor families who couldn't afford medical treatment. Her parents had passed away when she was very young due to not being able to afford medical care. This was very good. Postscript. It hurts so much, Song Wenjing, it can't be less than 100 taels. Lin Chuyo was rolling on the bed in pain, not forgetting to gasp and bargain with the crown prince. The midwife was stunned, probably seeing a pregnant woman bargaining with her husband for the first time. The crown prince looked speechless. Hurry up and give birth. 100 is 100 taels. Deal. An hour later. Why is the crown princess inside crying as if she were dying? She gave birth to twins. She says it's a loss and should ask the crown prince for 200 taels. Oh? Why isn't she crying anymore? The crown prince gave her 100 taels of gold. No wonder. The end.